Yeah, our weekly devotions, we've been talking about fear and anxiety. And today I want to talk about inevitable change which causes fear and anxiety and how that change has accelerated in recent years, especially the last 6 months, and how we deal with this profoundly, rapidly developing change. I was able to go to a virtual event, Learning with the Bishop, and it was on loss in congregational settings, and it was with Bishop Michael Gerlinghouse, who was the bishop of the Arkansas-Oklahoma Synod of the ELCA. And he also, as an author, he wrote the book, I think was as important in today's world, Embracing God's Future Without Forgetting the Past. A conversation about loss, grief, and nostalgia in congregational life. Because the reality is some congregations are in the throes of fear and anxiety and grieving, and the concern is some aren't going to make it. They won't be able to get past that. But basically what I thought in what he had presented, it also relates to us along with our congregation. Now, David Rusin, he's American Congregations Thriving and Surviving author, which was in Faith Communities Today.org, says, few would disagree that we live in a period of profound social and cultural change. In fact, cultural sociologist Ann Swindler refers to such times as unsettled. By this she means traditional ways of doing things typically no longer work, and new strategies for action must be developed without any assurance they will work. Now here's the thing, she wrote that in 2015. So my question to you is, do you feel unsettled? I know I do. I think virtually everybody does. I don't think we always necessarily realize why we are a certain way. Sad, maybe a little depressed, sad, anxious, and all those things. But here's the thing. Change always results in loss, and loss always results in change, which brings grief. The interesting thing about change, it could be a good change. Let's say, for example, you get a new job. You're all excited. You get a promotion. You get a new job. You're excited. Well, then you go to a new job, but you're no longer necessarily with the people you worked with before, or your office has changed, your location has changed. That brings change, and as I mentioned, change indeed can bring grief. And then, of course, there's bad change. Now, obviously, having a new job and that level of excitement is nowhere like a loss of life. The thing of it is, my friends, we may not even realize we're grieving. However, if we do not resolve our grief, this unresolved grief, which is grief upon grief upon grief, intensifies each time in its effects. And that's why we process our grief both as individuals and as a congregation. So next week I want to further talk about how the stages of grief that was where the gold standard has more or less changed and has been replaced by tasks of grief. And hopefully that will bring help. The important thing, so you don't have unresolved grief, is to process our grief. Of course, grief is a common human experience, and I talked about intensifies its effects, but it'll have emotional, social, spiritual, and physical dynamics. I know working with people who are grieving and watching how they would have physical problems, or they're struggling spiritually, or even emotionally, even socially, they're not getting out, they're not dealing with people. It has all those effects. So what I would like to do is I'd like to share this information and hopefully help you. The thing I came up with, my conclusion is grief is the cost of love. And the more deeply we love, the more deeply we grieve. So if we're in grief, that's because we had a deep love. And I want to talk much more about that. Now, people don't like to talk about grief. We don't like to dwell with that. We like to talk about the good things. 1 Thessalonians Chapter 4, 13 to 14 says, "But we do not want you to be uninformed, brothers and sisters, about those who have died, so that you may not grieve as others who do not have hope." Since we believe Jesus died and rose again, even so, through Jesus, God will bring with him those who have died. My friends, that's the good news. And as we talk about grieving, well, I believe the way to deal with grief is to have a narrative to talk about it. And hopefully we'll get a chance, but I'm going to be doing some things with the congregation, doing some Zoom meetings and maybe in-person things, outdoor maybe, but to talk about these narratives of all these different levels, our personal levels, the congregational levels, all the changes we've had in our life, and because everybody comes at it from a different direction. And it'll be interesting to see, and the reality is grief is just a natural human thing, and we all go through it in our life. And so instead of ignoring it, I'd like to actually have people talk about it with the hopes that it'll bring help. So that's my message today, and I hope you can join me next week, and I'll continue talking about this, a very, very important subject when we're dealing with fear and anxiety and what has happened in our society. And hopefully we can be together and we get past this. So I hope to see you. Blessings to all. Amen.